Hey everybody, it's Zach from Myshire Farm, and we are back again with another video to help you on your journey with Coturnix quail and becoming more self-sufficient. This video, I'm hoping, is going to help you a lot on your quail journey. I get questions about this all the time, and we are going to be talking about troubleshooting your incubators. I came up with 5 best practices to use to help you get the best hatch rate possible from the incubator that you purchase. There's a couple of background things that I want to go over first, so just bear with me. But remember, if you do have any questions, feel free to comment below. We answer all the comments in the section as well. Every Sunday and Monday for the most part, but almost every Sunday and Monday, we go live right here on our YouTube channel for a live question and answer. You can join us, ask your questions, and learn about your Coturnix quail, and we'd be happy to help you and have you there. But let's go over some background first, just so everybody's aware. So with that being said, there are many different incubators you can purchase, from the Nurturite 360 that holds somewhere around 40 eggs to the GQF that holds a lot of eggs and a lot of in between. I mean, you have a lot of options. We are doing some reviews on store-bought incubators in our playlist that I'll put in the description for you, so you can check those out. We've done, I think, 3 or 4 so far, and we're planning on doing a lot more, so stay tuned for that. And then you can decide if that works best for you or not. But I'm a big believer that whatever incubator you have, you can get a good hatch rate out of. But sometimes you have to manipulate the incubator. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So that's number 1. Number 2 is what we recommend. So temperature and humidity is very, very important for Coturnix quail eggs to hatch. Now, the humidity is not as important during the incubation process, but that doesn't mean it's not important. And we'll get to that in just a second. But let's talk about temperature first. We recommend, here in Ohio, we've hatched out hundreds of thousands of Coturnix quail throughout the years, and we have about 6,000 quail at all times. We hatch out weekly here. What works best for us and what we recommend for everybody is 99.5 degrees the entire process, from incubation to lockdown. And we'll talk about lockdown in just a second. Now, you can have a sliding scale on that, meaning it can go down to 99 degrees or it can go up to 100, and there's no change. There's nothing to worry about. You're completely good. Just let it ride. It's okay. But we do want to stabilize that, and I've got a rule of thumb for you to help you stabilize that incubator. But we recommend 99.5 degrees the entire process. During lockdown, and let's define lockdown real quick. So the incubation process is from day 0 to day 14, possibly 15 on how you incubate your quail. During that time, humidity is lower, and temperature, like we talked about, is 99.5, and the eggs are turning multiple times a day. We recommend at least 3 times a day that they're turning. It helps them grow and not have any deformities and be healthy chicks and things like that. Now that's the incubation process. Once you move them to lockdown, which is either day 14 or 15, depending on what you do, that is called the lockdown. And that is when the temperature stays the same, but you bump up that humidity, and then that's when the chicks hatch out. You take out the rails, you lay them down, and they start hatching. So the incubation process is the growing stage of the eggs. Lockdown is the hatching out stage of the eggs. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. And I'm saying all this now because when we get into the top 5 ways to help get a better hatch rate, you'll want to know that stuff. And we have a lot of questions about that with people just starting out, so I don't want to leave anything out. So with that, the reason why you want to bump up humidity at lockdown is because you want to soften the egg enough for the chicks to be able to hatch out and break through the egg. Now, during the incubation process, we recommend humidity be at 45%. That's ideal. At lockdown, you want to increase that from somewhere between 65 to 75% because you want to soften that egg up. During the incubation process, and I know it's a lot of information, but I want to give you all of it, okay? During the incubation process, humidity is not as important as it is at lockdown. Temperature is very important the entire time, but humidity is not that important. And we're going to talk about that in rule number 1. But at lockdown, it is very important because you've got to soften those eggs. You really don't want it to go over 80% at lockdown because then you can start drowning the eggs. But if it goes below 60%, the eggs are going to be too hard and they're not going to be strong enough to hatch out. So humidity is very important at lockdown as well. Like I said, 45% during incubation for humidity, 65 to 75% at lockdown, 99.5 degrees temperature the entire time, and it can fluctuate a half a degree. If it's reading incorrectly and you find out that it's reading 100.5, usually that just means they're going to start hatching out early. If you find out that if the temperature is actually 98.5, usually it's okay, you can adjust, and that just means that they're going to hatch out a little bit later. So don't overstress, everything's fixable for the most part, okay? All right, let's get into the top 5 rules because I'm already at 6 minutes, so thank you for watching so far. All right, so number 1 is different climates. Different climates, you can do different things with. So for example, we're in Ohio, we're not a very hot and humid area, so what we talked about before is what I recommend. Now, if you are in a very hot and humid area like Texas or Florida, or if you're in a high altitude area like Colorado or Utah, you might want to try a dry hatch, and I'm going to describe that and explain that very quickly. A dry hatch is when you increase the temperature to 100 degrees the entire process. You do not add any water. You let the surrounding area control the humidity in your incubator for the first 14 days, and then you increase humidity at lockdown. So it's a little bit different process, but if you're in a very hot and humid area, that should help you a lot being able to control your temperature and humidity a lot better if you're in an area like that. So different climates can result in different ways to incubate. So that's number 1. Number 2, stabilization is key in incubating Coturnix quail. They are much smaller eggs than chickens or ducks or anything like that, so being stable is very, very important. So a lot of incubators, especially the lower end ones or the cheaper ones, which is okay to get, especially starting out, usually will fluctuate a little bit. Now with that, the best tip I can give you is to wrap your incubator with a towel or a blanket. That will help stabilize and insulate your incubator, and that will help your hatch rate tremendously. It'll stabilize your temperature and it will help your humidity process. Now we talked about adding humidity at lockdown and how that's very important. Now some of the incubators, like the Little Giant, the Nurturite 360, things like that, it's very hard to increase that humidity all the way up to 65 to 75% and maintain it. So a good rule of thumb, a good practice, and a tip for you is to put a Tupperware bowl inside the incubator, fill it halfway up with water, and put a washcloth or a sponge in there. That will bump up your humidity dramatically, and usually you only need to fill that water up one extra time during the process. Now I know that a lot of people have concerns and questions about shrink wrapping the eggs. This is what we recommend. You take a little box, right? And so let's say they start hatching the morning of day 17. What we recommend is the morning of day 18, so 24 hours after the first hatch, or close to, doesn't have to be exact. You take a little box, you open the incubator quickly, you take all the dry chicks out, any wet chicks you leave in, you close up the incubator, and then you move the chicks to the brooder. So a quick process. If that happens, usually you're only having the lid off for at the most minute and a half, usually a lot less than that. It's not going to harm the eggs that haven't hatched out, but it's keeping the chicks that are dry happy and healthy and gives them plenty of room where they're not stepping on the other eggs that haven't hatched or whatever the case may be. So that's what we recommend with that. But increasing that humidity at lockdown is very important, and that would be a good tip for you to be able to do. Number 3. Nope, that was number... Yep, that was number 3. Number 4, when to candle. I get that question quite a bit as well. I do not recommend you candling anytime before you move them to lockdown. So if you're moving them to lockdown and taking the turners out on day 14 or 15, your incubator lid is already off. You can candle then, not a big deal. That's fine. That's when I recommend it. And I do recommend the best candler that we've found is called the Incubrite. You can find that on Amazon. We also sell it on our website because that's the only one we use. And believe me, we have went through a lot of different candlers. And we love the Incubrite candler for quail eggs. But that's when we candle. If you have not had experience with candling, here's a tip for you. Do not candle at all. Put them straight into lockdown. At the end of the hatch, then you can candle and you can change on, you can decide what you can troubleshoot with and if you had any issues or if they were developed or not or whatever the case may be. It's not too late to candle after the hatch. And then you can start learning on what you're looking for because quail eggs are a little bit different because they're so much smaller. Another option that you can do is candle at day 14 and mark with a little marker, not the whole thing, but just a little X on what you think is fertile and what you think is not, or what you think developed and what you think didn't. And then at hatch, you can decide, okay, well, all the X's did not hatch, so I was right. Or, oh, look, 7 of the 10 I marked with the X's did hatch, so I have some learning to do. That's okay too. So those are 2 good rules. And what I want to add to that, what you're looking for. I do have a candler video that you can check out on the website, so I won't go into that because I'm already at 12 minutes. I'm trying to give you a bunch of information and go as fast as possible for you, but I do want you to have this information. What you're looking for is where you can improve your hatch going forward. Now, if you're buying shipped eggs, it could be shipping, it could be the supplier, it could be this, it could be that. There could be a lot of different things, right? Your incubator is something that you can control, change, and manipulate. That's where we want to start. I'm not saying that that's where all the issues are, but that's something that we can control, okay? So with that being said, we want to look at development, which is why it's completely okay to candle at the end of the hatch. You can decide, okay, well, I had 30 eggs and only 4 developed and only 1 hatched. Okay, well, I can almost guarantee you we've got a temperature issue. So let's troubleshoot that before you hatch any more out. Let's see what it actually is, and let's go from there. 9 times out of 10, when that happens, the customers will contact me back and go, yeah, it was reading 2 degrees off, or it was reading 1.5 degrees off. Okay, well, that's a clear sign. Or I ordered 30 eggs, 28 were fertile, but I only had 4 hatch. That usually means it's a humidity issue. So the reason why you would want to candle is to help stabilize, manipulate, and change your incubator to get better hatches going forward. So that was just a side note. Last but not least, checks and balances. I am a big believer that all incubators lie. Real quick, this is my thought process on the whole quail life, okay? Incubators lie. They want you to have a bad hatch. You have to manage and control that. When the chicks hatch out, they think they're scuba divers. They want to drown in the water. They want to trample each other. They want to, they love to be destructive. You have to manage that. When they get older, they want to find out the most creative ways to die. You have to manage that. You're really just managing them the entire time. So with that being said, how do you manage your incubator? Well, we gave you some tips, but incubators lie. So I really recommend that you get a reliable, trusted thermometer / hygrometer. And you put that inside the incubator, and that will tell you what the temperature inside is and what your humidity will be. That's what the hygrometer is. And that is kind of like a checks and balances to what the incubator says. So for example, I told you that we did a couple of reviews of store-bought incubators on the playlist, and all 3 times they were off, just a little, but they were off. A lot of the times customers will call me and say, hey, I got the Govee incubator hygrometer, and the incubator was off by 1.5 degrees, the incubator was off by 2 degrees, you know, this, that, and the other, and that Govee really saves them. So we recommend the Govee. I'll put the link to the description in the comments so you can check that out. But any incubator or any thermometer, hygrometer that you really trust or has high reviews or whatever the case may be, I highly recommend you invest in one of those and put in there. And if they're different, always trust your separate thermometer, hygrometer, especially if there's a lot of good reviews and it's trusted or you've used it before and you like it, whatever the case may be. So that's a good checks and balances, because I just don't trust incubators. So those are the top 5 things. I'm going to real quick recap. 1 is different climates, dry hatch versus regular hatch. Number 2, stabilization is key. Wrap that thing with a towel or a blanket and help stabilize and control the temp inside and humidity. Number 3 is adding humidity at lockdown. Sometimes that's difficult, so the sponge with the water with the little Tupperware helps tremendously, or the washcloth. Number 4 is wind a candle and what you're looking for. And number 5 is checks and balances. Make sure that the incubator is not lying to you, because we want as many chicks as possible to hatch on both sides. If you're buying eggs from us, if you're purchasing eggs from us, I want you to get the best hatch rate possible. You want to get the best bang for your buck, and you want 100% hatch rate. I want you to get 100% hatch rate. The incubators do not, so make sure you're checking balancing that. I hope that helps. I know it's a really long video, especially for just me talking, but I hope that it helps a lot. There's a lot of information to unpack in there. If you have any questions, comment below. Remember, Sundays and Mondays I go live for a live question and answer, so you can join us on there. I'd love to be able to talk to you and answer your questions. But thank you very, very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, as always, stay safe.